Heather and I came to Windsor at the end of June 1987 with our three children, Sandy 8, Susie 6, and Andrew age 3. We had accepted the call to come and minister at Grace after our visit on Easter weekend. Actually, I was afraid of accepting, but I realized that my fear was not a good enough reason for saying no. When we arrived with the moving van, Heather and my mom and dad and I came first, the kids staying at Heather's folks' house in Toronto. When we got here, there was a great team of Grace volunteers waiting for us at the parsonage, including John and Venus Jerrison, George and Debbie Markovic, as well as others. They helped us unpack the truck, helped us get moved in, helped us to begin to get set up. Our first Sunday was July the 5th, and I preached on the subject, Critical Landmarks. The text was 2 Corinthians 4, 1-7. Therefore, since through God's mercy, we have this ministry. We quickly became immersed in the life of Grace. The first week included a trip to Cleveland with Pastor Vlavochani to attend the Czechoslovak Baptist Convention there. Back at Grace, a great group of people loved and encouraged and supported and prayed for us and our family. There was a wonderful group of seniors at that time, and some of these took us under their wing. There were some men also that gathered on Fridays and shared coffee and Bible study and prayer and lots of discussion. And that was a great group of gentlemen. Some of those were Bob Green, Carl Jovanovich, Jack Noller, John Jerrison, and others. The church at that time had faith and was willing to move forward, and we endeavored to do so together. There was also a long tradition when we arrived of ministry to children and youth, and this now continued with an active Sunday school program, midweek program, and youth ministry. Thursday Night Live, a program for youth at Gordon McGregor Public School, a couple of blocks away from the church, was begun on Thursday nights. Western Association Baptist youth events and VBS each summer, and an annual trip to Camp Henry in the fall kept everybody busy, and as we ministered together to the young people. It showed a commitment in the church to love the children and the youth and to share with them the love of Christ. A 4-mile walk, run, bicycle ride along the Ganache Trail, ending up back at Carlene Berry's house, was a fun summer activity for many years. Also, an annual skiing outing in January or the beginning of February to Alpine Valley, Michigan, was another great event that attracted families and children, and we had wonderful times together. All of these events happened at Grace as the family of God worked and served and played together. I remember we had a baseball team also for a few years, or for a short time, called Amazing Grace, who had bright yellow shirts. What great fun and fellowship we had. When we arrived near the end of the 80s, Grace already had a long bilingual tradition, English and Slavic people speaking, and Slavic speaking people working and worshiping and serving and fellowshipping together. Two goals soon emerged. One for the church to gradually assume full financial support for the associate pastor position. At that time, this support was coming from three sources: the CBOQ, the Czechoslovak Baptist Convention, and also from the church, from Grace itself. But now Grace began to assume more and more of this until finally we were fully supporting two full-time pastors, and that was a great step forward. And it was also an important step of faith and commitment. Another important issue at the time was the completion of the early 1980s building program. Back in the early 80s, a program had added a CE wing, but at that time, due to cost considerations, the planned gymnasium or multi-purpose room and kitchen were all postponed. But there was a vision remaining and a desire to see this completed. But How? In the early 90s, an expansion committee began meeting and praying for this next step. Funds began to be put aside and accumulated over the next several years. And finally, plans were drawn up, which included not only a new gym or multi-purpose room and kitchen, but also the expansion of the sanctuary and a new balcony and an elevator and a renovated entranceway. It was an ambitious dream, but God was sending us new people who also caught the vision. Early in 1997, contractors were invited to submit bids for the project, and that May, the church approved the budget proposal of Interthon Construction, subject to the arranging of financing, and in June, with that in place, the church voted to proceed. The previous September, the milestone had been reached where funds received and promised for the project passed $200,000. And with an anticipated project cost of $500,000, it was time to move forward. Nevertheless, once again, this was a step of faith and commitment. God honored this faith and proved his faithfulness and ability to provide by enabling us to pay off the mortgage by 2002, just 5 years from the starting date. All praise and glory and honor to him. Matthew House Windsor, a short-term residence for refugee claimants on Drouillard Road, just a couple of blocks away from the church, opened in 2003. About this time, a stream of international people began to find their way to the church, and Grace welcomed them and reached out to them with kindness and help. I think that many of our people, having come to Canada as immigrants themselves, remembered what it was like when they first arrived, and so extended hospitality to these newcomers, even as they had received such when they came. And as this movement of international folk into the church continued over a period of time, we gradually transitioned from being a bicultural Slavic English congregation or church and to a multinational one. And that gives a special character and flavor to our church as a community of grace, joyfully including people of different nationalities and creatively combining our differences in glad shared fellowship with Jesus Christ. The people of grace wonderfully encouraged and supported Heather and I and our family through all the years. Together we worshiped and served and laughed and prayed and played. So many wonderful times together. And also so many wonderful meals enjoyed. First of all in the downstairs auditorium, and then later after the expansion program in the multipurpose room. Wonderful meals of different ethnic flavors and fellowship. And together we welcome newcomers and help them in starting a new life. This, I believe, is Grace Baptist Church's unique niche of service, a glimpse and foretaste of heaven with its gathering of people from every nation to worship and serve the Lord and enjoy him forever. Our prayer is that the church will support and love the next pastor and carry forward the welcoming love of Christ that we have received and are commissioned to share.